Hello, you lovely people out there. Welcome back to Homeschool Together. Today, we're on the banks of the Tiber River in a little town we may have heard about, Rome. And we have finally made it. One of the big,
Little town.
the itty bitty town.
Un pueblo pequeño.
Yeah, very good. Good Duolingo is helping my wife. Welcome back. So we have started Rome, the big one. This is the big one. And this week we were focused on mainly the origin of Rome, kind of the mythology around the origin. They got into a little bit of a scuffle when they were young with the Carthaginians and the Punic Wars, and we really started to look at, kind of what a Roman soldier looks like. So this was the war week. This is the
right,
but it's going to be a theme. There's going to be a lot of war.
Well, right. I mean, this is the first week of Rome, and this is a long. Rome is a 6-week odyssey, and it's really different than Greece because before we did this,
or even Egypt, that was about 4 or 5 weeks as well.
And before we started this, I really thought like Greeks, Romans, you kind of throw them in together when you talk about ancient history. And really, they're very different because the focus of a lot of ancient Greece was all about this wonderful mythology. And Rome is very different, right? There's a lot of military stuff. Of course, we did some military with Sparta, but a lot of military with Rome and a lot more about like politics and
and power and empire and control and
right.
That type of
and
stuff,
it's kind of some really big topics for first grade. So we had a little bit of a struggle here to continue to make this something that we could really relate, because the Greek mythology, I mean, our daughter was like, she was all into that fantasy, but this is something where there's a lot more nuance going on, and and very different scale. Yeah. So,
but let's start with
the
classic Greek literature. And we see this sometimes with the ancient civilization. We saw this with the around the world journeys as well. Sometimes the reading is not related to the things. So,
I don't know. So I think sometimes she's able to find a great book that must dovetail in. And
other times, there's a couple books we're going to be reading in the next couple of weeks that are really, really good. But we start off with something.
Every once in a while she wants to put in something that's like, this is great, kindergarten, first grade, or whatever level you're in literature. And so yes, The House at Pooh Corner.
What balances war better than Winnie the Pooh?
Well, and I don't know. So this is the first week that we started Winnie the Pooh. It's a classic if you haven't read any Winnie the Pooh. And
The House at Pooh Corner.
I hadn't read any Winnie the Pooh before. It was exactly like I thought it was going to be. One of the things that we were able to do, because this is in the open source, you can go ahead if you've got a Yoda. We did a great podcast all about our Yoda.
Put it in the show notes. Yeah,
I'll put it in the show notes. We were able to go to LibriVox, which has all public domain audiobooks that people volunteer to read. And we actually got this as an audiobook. So you did some reading and we did some audiobook, which was a really terrific way to get you can get dramatizations of it on there too, not just a single reader, but a whole bunch of people, almost like a radio play.
Yeah, it was ensemble type of thing.
Yeah, and so we were able to actually do that between reading it and then we've been doing some listening while we've been doing some of our art, which has worked out really nice.
About halfway through, we should finish next week when we get to Cleopatra for Rome. But right now, it's been really good. Not really my style of book. I understand why people like it. But I think it really helps because if you don't really want to get into it, kind of like we talked about with the Aru Shah book, if it's not really going for you, maybe there's a graphic novel. In this case, there's a readily available audio version. It's a nice way to offload that reading. And really, because when you're doing a lot of this reading, when you're reading in these books that we're about to talk about, when you're doing all the curriculum, you're reading in the history quest, and you're doing all these things, reading 20 pages of Winnie the Pooh walking around looking for sticks is maybe not the thing you want that week.
So we'll give you our final summary next week when we do, but we're about halfway through and this is how we're tackling it so far.
This is the second, I think, in the Pooh series, right? There's another one, I think, that was first. She chose this one to be the one to read. Classic Winnie the Pooh.
Right. Winnie the Pooh's the first one.
First one.
Okay.
Anyway. I think they stand alone.
Yes, I don't think you need the preamble of the first one.
It's not like Marvel where you need to watch all 30 movies to get the ending.
Pooh stands alone.
Pooh stands alone. So first thing we want to do is talk about Usborne books. We always recommend Usborne books. We are not an Usborne reseller. We are an Usborne consumer of Usborne books from Goodwill.
Right.
That's
and
where we go.
What's great, if you're using your Usborne World Encyclopedia, which is a spine for this, which we do love, you'll notice that you'll see some of these internet-linked Romans. We talked about Greeks earlier. This is not just a repackaging of the same material that's in the encyclopedia.
Way more. In the encyclopedia, you're going to read 2 3 pages a week on that, and maybe over the course of all 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you'll get like 10 pages of Rome. This is like 80, 90, 100 pages of Rome, really in depth. What I like about this book,
drawings.
great drawings. So if you find something that really interests you for that week, you can go and piece through here and find those sections and read those sections and almost treat this as a spine within the week, within the weeks of Rome. Really, really cool. I found we're on to next. We're already on to next week, but I've been kind of nibbling at this book. This is a great book to read. I have a feeling all the weeks we're going to be doing Rome, I'm just going to be finding pieces here. You know, eventually when we get to the baths, when we get to Pompeii, get to Cleopatra, power, you know, other aspects, the engineering and all that type of stuff. There's going to be pieces in this book that we're just going to nibble at, and it's really, really good. We really liked it. Did you find this online or?
Oh no, this was Goodwill, and I think or one of the thrift stores. Yep. But yeah, these are great.
I like this one because it has really pretty drawings, and they're really subtle. You look at it and go, oh, those look kind of like cartoony things. But they're really not. They have a lot of depth.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail.
A lot of detail in it. I really like it.
And what's great about these, we love to give, like we have the same one for the Greeks. We just gave it to our daughter at the beginning of that section and said, like, look through this and see what interests you and what you want to learn more about. And it kind of helped shape what we did as we went through based on what she was naturally interested in. So these are great. They're just a soft back book, and I think they're a really great resource.
Going forward, right on brand, right behind Ariel, down to her left is about 80 of these, and luckily we have invested over the years. Eyewitness, it's a common recommendation that we have.
Yep.
We recommend it because they're so widely available. You can get them used, you can find them at Goodwill, you can just check them out at the library. They're wonderful, and what we always like about these is that they show real artifacts, real stuff, so that you're actually seeing what they're telling the story from. That's why we like these books, because a lot of times you get the coloring, you know, the little cartoonish drawings and stuff, and that's great for this age group. But also seeing the real stuff is also really, really cool.
So if you can't make it to a museum with Roman artifacts, this is your next.
This was really nice too, because we did talk about the Roman soldier. And there we go. We got to break up all the pieces of the Roman soldier, find all the gear. Starting to talk to my daughter about, hey, you know, Daddy has a weight vest down in his garage that's 40 pounds. These guys are hauling around 80. Like, can you imagine two? So we go pick that up. And imagine walking 20 miles to go to battle. It's a lot, and it's really, really cool to kind of see what they wore, what they used. So.
Yeah.
Kind of give them that picture.
I think this concludes. We have ancient China coming up, because otherwise we had ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, all in the eyewitness books. And yes, spoiler alert, ancient China will be coming. So these are great if you want to check these out from your library or invest in a collection. Like we have, I think this is one of those things, like we will keep forever. Our grandchildren will look at these books.
Absolutely, 100%. So, going through it, this is a spine that I think we've already detailed before. Just to let you know, child of time, there's a week for the Romans. I think it's a little girl named Aurelia.
Aurelia, yeah. This is a great book. We're just reminding you that this is another week for a child through time. You're not going to use it every single week of this curriculum, but it's a wonderful book. If you don't have it, I'd highly recommend that you get it.
Absolutely.
We'll put a link down in the show notes to find it if you'd like.
Absolutely wonderful. When on Earth, we've talked about this book as well. Now, one of the things that I think one of the challenges you have to do at the beginning is find the civilization. We're now not in Mesopotamia. Now we're in South Central Europe. And understanding the scale of the Romans, because that's going to be the big piece. Understanding it just became this massive empire surrounding the Mediterranean, and really kind of getting to the map, getting to the globe, getting to see what it is and how it grew out from there. And so we always love this When on Earth book. It really gives you.
Great. When we were doing Alexander, if you watched our episode on Alexander, we used this book to try to get that scale as well, because we're trying to get our kids to wrap their heads around what happens. And this is terrific because it shows the borders of the empire. It shows where battles happen. Yeah, it shows the movements of,
Yeah, and this one specifically is something you're going to need when you're discussing the Punic Wars. If you don't invest in the next book that we talk about, when you're talking about the Punic Wars, all three Punic Wars, specifically Hannibal's march from Spain all the way into Italy, and I think the end of the Second or Third Punic Wars, really kind of getting that scale and understanding, because that was this week's main thing. And in this history quest, you follow the general as well as your history hop. So the Punic Wars is a big discussion piece this week, because it really is that moment where there's this titanic fight between Carthage and Rome, and really the history of Rome was held in the grasp of Hannibal when he wins at the Battle of Cana, and really trying to tell my daughter, hey, if this battle goes terribly and he decides to march to Rome, we're talking about the Carthaginian Empire for 2,000 years.
Mm.
And like, how does history change from there? And it's really, really cool. So this Punic Wars is really important in kind of that identity of Rome and really seeing how they blossom from this kind of monarchy into this republic. And, how did they survive to that? And then how did that set the groundwork for what's coming up in the next couple of weeks? Really, really important concept. This book really helped us see that, and it was a touchstone to other learning as well.
Yeah.
And then going forward with
I
that,
love this book.
the book we have talked about before, Battles That Change History. Obviously, I just referenced the battle at
This was the best book I ever bought for him. That's been for homeschool.
For homeschool.
But we got it, and we have used it continually through Ancients.
So I just referenced it. The Battle of Cana, which was Hannibal's great victory against the Romans, was not enough to knock out the Romans. They always come back. The Romans always come back, and they bring the heat with it. So this was a really cool book that we were able to I was able to get a nice little grounding about this, and then we were able to, from this learning, go over to YouTube, which we'll talk about in a minute or two, and really get a deeper understanding about the Punic Wars. Really, really interesting period of Rome. I think it's sort of like when you think about like the Peloponnesian War that we talked about with Greece, and how important that was, setting the stage for Alexander weakening Greece. How did this set the stage for the Rome that we knew? And so it's really, really cool because it's a common theme coming out of this literature on how it kind of defined who they were. Going from that, we did a little bit of artwork, not too much. We did a lot more audio-visual stuff, but just talking about a little bit about the royal purple of Rome, talking about togas and the tunics and all the fun stuff. And
our girls grabbed blankets and made togas.
There's a little bit of it at the end, not really as much, but talking a little bit about Julius Caesar. We're going to do a deeper dive next week in Julius Caesar when we get to Cleopatra, and then a little bit more after that in the following week as well. But just starting to introduce Julius Caesar a little bit, and kind of his role. But we didn't get all the way up to that. It was really to the end of the Punic Wars, just before Julius was born, and started doing his stuff there, kind of in the late first century BCE. So yes, just trying to get all the time periods. The final countdown until we finally start counting back up. It was a really, really cool week. So this week we did a lot of media. We did not do any movies per se.
No, and really this was because we didn't have time. So I mean, two main things, right? Of course, Gladiator, if you as adults want to watch something for a movie. Additionally, if you want to watch a show, HBO had a show called Rome that had like 4 seasons or something that I remember.
Definitely for the adults, yes.
Adults, but good. So if there's something that you want to follow along with as an adult, that would be great. We didn't really find any movies that were really appropriate for kids because a lot of this stuff was either politics or blood. So there wasn't really like a proper kid intro to this, and like we said, they just don't really have the basis of mythology stuff. You did watch some great videos on Romulus and Remus, and the founding of Rome.
Yeah, the TEDx has a couple great videos on Rome. Also, there's a couple videos on like the gods and how they align with the Greek gods, because they worship the same gods, they just had different names. Jupiter is Zeus, and so on and so forth. They have just the same names, the analogs. The mythology was just as important to them, but it's not in the standpoint of popular culture. It seems like the Greek mythology is more king in that respect than the Roman mythology, but it was the same. So it was kind of interesting trying to like put the names across, and because we just finished Percy Jackson, so our daughter is like very deep into the Greek mythology, and now we're going here, and she goes, Daddy, who are these people? I'm like, oh, they're just literally the same people.
Basically the same.
Just different names.
But there's not really even much kids' literature with them. It's really interesting. There's so much for Greek mythology and just so little for Roman mythology.
And it may be out there, but who knows. But so we did the Romulus and Remus, kind of this mythology and how it was built around there. And then we went into some of the battles. There's obviously Kings and Generals, which I've recommended before as a great YouTube channel that kind of shows the battles. They have some really long videos, not necessarily something for a first grader to watch, but they have some nice small shorts that will show you kind of battle formations and how things happened. Talking a lot about Hannibal as well. There's some really nice videos on his march through the Alps and all his war elephants that none of them made it to the battle, maybe 1 or 2 at the very end. But really cool idea of thinking like, oh, there's elephants marching through the Alps. It's really kind of a unique idea.
That's crazy.
Kind of crazy to think about. So it was really cool videos. There's a lot of great content here. Also, if you're looking for something to listen to, if you're trying to follow along, kind of what Ariel said with the Gladiator or the Rome recommendation, Dan Carlin did a whole series on hardcore history on the Punic Wars as well. So if you're interested in downloading that, I think that is in his archive. So you may have to purchase that, but well worth the listen. Really enjoyed that. So
yeah, for adults,
for
again,
adults,
it's
again.
multiple hours. It's
Or if
not
you
that
have-
it's inappropriate. It's just
if you have
long.
an older learner that's kind of coming along, maybe a 4th or 5th grader who's really into battles and they kind of like that stuff, that might be something they're interested, but it might be a little dry. So,
Middle school minimum.
Middle school
that would be
minimum,
my
yeah.
recommendation for Dan Carlin, who is fantastic.
Yes,
but
absolutely. So that was our first week in Rome. We hit a bunch of books.
Mm-hmm.
We did a bunch of stuff. Did a lot of video, a lot of audio video stuff for this week.
And this is just really the launch pad. We've
It's the launch
got
pad.
5 more weeks.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned. Next week we're getting to Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. So it's gonna get drama. There's gotta be drama.
Are you playlist Taylor? I'll be Mark Antony, but I'll be Mark Antony.
Good to know. Good to know. Stay tuned to see what happens.